introductions? Seeing none, we'll move on to today's agenda, which we're going to be talking about wage and salary issues at the Department of Transportation. If you look in your agenda, there are 3 written testimonies from James Kitch, Greg Handley, Jay Gibbs, and there's also written testimony from Donna Schmidt. And I believe Donna is on WebEx to provide testimony online. Donna, are you there?
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Yes, great, Donna. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Do we have visual, Logan? Okay. Yeah, Donna, can you go ahead and begin your testimony?
Okay, certainly. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to hear me today. So I am the area engineer in District 4, Area 2, out of Garnett, Kansas. And I have 5 counties, and just wanted to express some of the frustrations we've had with trying to get staff on board and some of the battles that we have here in the field. On the maintenance side, we have just over 1,300 lane miles to maintain. And with that, we are assigned 31 dump trucks. And 64 staff positions to staff the maintenance side. So of those 64 openings, the maintenance positions are assigned according to dump trucks. Most specifically during snow and ice removal, we need 2 equipment operators for every truck, because that they do 12-hour shifts and they run 24 hours. So we need two staff members for each truck. So as of January 1st, I had 42 employees on the maintenance side with 31 dump trucks. During snow and ice events, we supplement with some drivers from Chanute and some drivers from the construction side. That gives me 10 extra, but I still have 12 plow shifts that are unstaffed because I have no one to put in the plow during snow and ice events in my 5 counties. And then when it's not during snow and ice events, but the rest of the year, I have 22 positions currently unfilled to do the remaining maintenance work, which is mowing, signs, patching, guardrail, all that type of work. So that math will tell you that's a 34% shortage of staff from what we have openings. In August of last year, the equipment operator rate was increased, and we thank Kdot for doing that. What they did was they raised the starting wage. They did not raise anyone above that. So that starting wage, if you have a CDL, went to $16.56 an hour. So I have a guy in Garnett who's been working for Kdot for 14 years, makes $16.56 an hour because he did not get a raise. And the guy that started last week makes $16.56 an hour. So there was no raise to anyone upper ups. No value was given to the experience of the staff that's already on hand. I also reached out to the counties, my 5 counties, and you can see the starting wage there on my sheets for those 5 counties. Of the 5 counties, Kdot pays less than 4 of them. So there's no incentive for anyone to even apply at the state because they go to work for the county and make more money. The counties also have processes in place to give their employees raises. Most of them have the 14 years to go a step raise each year. And Kdot has taken that away. So there are no raises there. I know they say Kdot supplements a lot by hiring outside help. And they recently signed a contract for guardrail because we can't keep up with the guardrail with our staff shortages. So we can call a contractor, Collins and Hermans, that was just signed on for District 4. The annual estimated cost of that for District 4 is over $500,000 a year. And so we may be saving money by not paying our staff, but we're paying it out to the contractors now to do that work for us instead of having to be able to give that money to our own staff and bring more people on board. Now I want to switch over to the construction side. The value of the construction that was administered out of my office in 2021 was $46.2 million. I have 4 engineering technicians, 1 engineering technician specialist, and 1 engineer associate. And they oversaw $46 million worth of work. We also can't get people to come and apply for our positions there, so we hire consultant inspectors. And last year we had contracts with consultants to pay $4.5 million because Kdot can't hire the staff to do that work in-house. Next year in 2022, our same 4 people or 5 people are expected to administer $90 million worth of work coming up in 2022. Again, they just tell us out of Topeka, hire more consultants. So my estimated, I don't have all my consultants on contract yet, but my estimate is $8.3 million worth of consultant work to be done this summer, out just in my area only. This is in my 5 counties, $8.3 million. The entire operating budget for District 4 is $14.6 million. You divide that by 4, because there's 4 areas and district staff and everything. I mean, that's like $3.5 million, probably the budget for my Kdot staff for my area, and I'm paying $8.3 million out to consultants. You can see in the table there, I compared the Kdot wage to what we pay the consultant rate. So my people in-house are making from $15 to $18 an hour as an inspector. The consultants that we're told to hire, because we don't have the staff, which is nice, we have the help, but their minimum pay is $19 and their maximum pay is $47 an hour. And that's what the employee takes home. We also have to pay them a multiplier rate. That's the consultant loaded rate in that table. So Kdot is actually paying consultants $46 a minimum to $151 maximum to hire a consultant inspector. And they're paying our in-house people $18 an hour max. The same is true for the engineers. I have that listed there as well. My pay rate on there is the $37.99. And if you'll notice, we pay consultant inspectors with no engineering degree $47 an hour, and I make $38. So we are hiring these people, expecting our staff to manage these people, and they're making 3 and 4 times, 2 to 3 times what our own staff is being paid. So it's just, you can't keep people at that. I talked to the district engineer actually in District 2. Last summer, he lost 3 technicians that went to consultant for a higher rate, and ended up hiring that consultant back, paying those same 3 engineering technicians to inspect his project, but had to pay them 2 and 3 times the same rate to get the same people to do the work, because they're not going to stay working for Kdot. They go to the consultants instead. As an average, in my area, the construction inspectors that we pay make $14 an hour more than what the Kdot inspectors do. That's just the average rate to everyone we've paid out. Since I started in Kdot in March of 2014, I've been here for 8 years. I have received 4 2.5% raises. When the raises are given out based on percentage, that was one other thing I wanted to point out, is the equipment operators and the inspectors that are making the lower rate, you offer them a 2.5% raise, they get 38 cents an hour. When it's all based on percentage, the lower people at the low end of the scale, which are the ones part of the ones I have trouble hiring, they get, a very, very small amount of raise. I wish Kdot would consider, if they give a raise, maybe give everyone $1 an hour or whatever, because the people who are making so much higher, when you give it on percentage, they just get that much higher of a rate. And the opening positions, again, are very, very low. So that kind of wraps up what I wanted to say. I just wanted to point out that you feel like Kdot really places no value on experience. There's really not much initiative to continue to work for Kdot. And especially when we work hand in hand with the consultants, we see what they're paid, we're paying their bills, and we're the ones paying them and training them how to do our jobs. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to field them.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Donna. Do we have any questions for Ms. Schmidt? Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about the consultant pay.
Yes.
I want to make sure I understand this right. In the very first line where it says ET minimum, consultant pay is $19 an hour, but we're charged $46.23 an hour. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So for the profit per hour that we're paying out is $27.23.
They have to go through an audit each year and come up with that multiplier rate. That covers that's not all profit. That also covers their overhead.
Okay, well,
so if they're put their clerical people, yeah.
Okay, I probably shouldn't have said profit, but we're
Okay.
paying $23. I'm sorry, $27.23 23 cents rather above what somebody would make as a consultant privately. Is that the way this I understand this?
Correct. Right. The guy in the field makes the $19 an hour, but we pay his company $46.23.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions for Donna? I've got a couple. So the engineering techs, do they help with snow removal or anything like that during the winter months?
They do. Yes.
So they all have their CDL?
Yes. They're required to have their CDL. Yes.
And they make, so I would assume after the raises, then the ET minimum is now $16.56, is that correct? Probably instead of the $15.03?
That is not true. No. They hire on as an engineering technician associate at the 1503, and then after about a year, if they've had all their classes and all their coursework, they come up to the 1656.
So they're making less than the equipment operator when they hire on, but they still have to have a CDL?
So the equipment operator also hires on at the 1503 if they do not have a CDL. But once they get their CDL to the 1656.
Okay. And then, so we're paying out $4.5 million for consultant inspections in 2021, correct? In your district? We paid that much to the consultants?
I have to justify that by saying that was the contract amount. Not every one of them, we charged 100% full, and I didn't have privilege to that information. So this was just what I have under contract with consultants.
So
does
can you give me a ballpark estimate in 2021 what the consultant inspection fees would be? Do you have any way to ballpark it?
I would say 85 to 90% of that number.
So we're looking at somewhere around 3.6 million.
I can tell you in District 4, not just but in District 4 overall, we paid out $7.6 million in 2021. That was actual paid out.
In your estimation, how many employees would you have needed to hire to do that $7.6 million worth of work and not need any contractors? I know it's going to take a while to bring people up to speed. It's not going to happen overnight, but I mean, are we talking 100 employees or 5 employees or, I mean, I have no idea.
I would say we probably had 20 different inspectors consultants on staff through those projects last year. 20 people. So
you'd need to hire 20 people, you think, to make it work?
To fill it. And I understand that. I mean, I'm not saying that Kdot should be able to staff them 100% in-house. I don't mean to eliminate consultants. My point is that we can't keep staff because they can do the very same job and make double the money.
I'm trying. This is dangerous. This is like Google research for me. You know, I'm running 7.6 million and I'm trying to divide it by 20 and I can't get my cell phone to do the math
Well,
right. So it looks
and the
like to me, 20 employees,
7.6,
we could pay, well, I mean, I'm sure we wouldn't do that. We could have a cost of 380,000 an employee and save or break even.
yeah, and the 7.6 was district-wide. And the 20 employees is what I said probably is what we hired out of just for my 5 counties. For the $4 million.
Okay, I'm still trying. So you're saying I should divide somewhere around 3.5 million by 20,
Probably.
which would be like 175,000. Okay. I mean, it just looks like we ought to have some ways we could have some cost savings if we went forward with some of those thoughts. And then you'd have additional staff to do snow removal and other things during downtime. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They have plenty to do. There's a lot of paperwork that goes along with it that they work on in the wintertime, but then they get pulled off of that and sent to the field whenever there's snow and ice storms.
You said something about 500,000 or something for a guardrail estimation. Is that really something that it's cost effective for you to do, or is there kind of a learned skill there where if you change guardrails out all the time, you can do it faster than if you just have a guardrail, you know, every 3 months to change out?
That's a very good question. This is the first time.
The guardrail actually has a cost also that's included in that 500,000, right? I mean,
Yes, yes, you're right. We would have to pay for those parts. I can't tell you if the contract for sure includes that we pay for the guardrail besides, in addition to that, or I assume that included the parts. We've always done the guardrail in-house ourselves. Guardrail kind of has a bit of a season, so the guys get pretty skilled at doing it because in the wintertime, a lot more guardrail gets hit. And so then they go out and they'll do guardrail from end to end, you know, across their sub area. But that's not saying that that's the only time it happens. And so it does, you know, they do. It is it's the first time I've known them to hire a contractor to do that. So my guys have all done it and they all know how to do it. But whether it's more efficient to have a contractor do it, you could be correct in that.
I mean, I don't know. I would count on your expertise to lead me down that path.
They all know how to do it. It's one of their assignments that they do.
So you know of no way, kind of switching ways. So we had an employee that had been there for 14 years and he was making $16.56 an hour. Brand new guy gets hired and he's making $16.56 an hour. And you know of no way in your current management structure to be able to give the 14-year guy a raise. You supervise him, I assume.
Well, I don't supervise him directly, but yes. So that particular employee, there were some offers early on for some of the equipment operators to go to unclassified in order to get a raise, and he chose not to. So he could have had a bump up through that. And then he could also choose to do some internal training and tests. And if he passes certain things, to promote to an EO midpoint over an EO. So there are ways, yes.
So why didn't he take advantage of any of those? Do you have any idea? I know it's a personal decision, but.
Correct. I assume he's probably not a good test taker, so probably would not, didn't want to go the route for the you have to pass the training over the certain type of tests. The other ones, I have several employees who are scared to go unclassified because they feel like KDOT will fire them for no cause. I try to convince them if you do your job, that's not going to happen, but I haven't been successful in that. And so they want that civil service protection.
And I do want to,
Have to give that up to get a raise.
and if staff will make sure that I don't misspeak here. We had early testimony on the very first day. We've been looking at a lot of the different agencies. It's not just this agency. But I think we had testimony that they did away with the annual step increases in 2000. Was it 2002 or 2011? I mean, you know, they did away with those. I think it was 11 that they did away with the longevity pay. Does that sound right? Dylan, yeah. Huh?
I'd have to double check my data, but I think longevity was 09 and last step movement was 11.
Yeah. So it doesn't make your job any easier, or it doesn't make things any better, but some of these things have been gone for, well, we're getting close to decades now, and I think
Right.
we're starting to see the long-term effects of some of those. Do you have, does any of the contracted trash pickup, I've heard complaints from people about contracted trash pickup along the lines of what you're talking about as far as the inspections. Does any of that happen in your district?
We do not have any contracted trash pickup.
So you're,
Not in my area. I can't tell you about my district, I guess, but not in my area.
and then are you staffed well enough that you can get your summer mowing and stuff like that done? I guess that kind of creates part of the problem on having adequate staff for the consultant or the inspections that the consultant are doing. Do those kind of conflict a little bit, or?
For the mowing, well, the mowing's done by the maintenance side versus the construction side. But, I mean, the mowers are always behind as well. I mean, because we don't have the staff to do it, but
How many, did you tell us how many equipment operators staffs are open right now?
I have 22 positions open right now, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? I hate to dominate the conversation. Representative Delperdang?
Thank you, Chairman. More of just a comment to you, Mr. Chairman, if you could, but on the information we're given, on one, we've got Kdot as far as hourly rates, the other, we've got the consultant, so forth. I'd like to know, what is the real burden rate here? It's not taking in the full cost on an hourly basis. There should be a burden rate, includes insurance, pensions, sick leave, all that stuff, and it's a missing figure here to compare apples to apples.
Yeah, we'd have to have that for the consultant also to compare that apples to apples, wouldn't we? Yeah. That might be a little hard to get that information. I'm sure we could get the KDOT burden rate, but any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Donna. Appreciate your testimony, and it's been good information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative.
As I mentioned earlier, we have written testimony from James Kitch, Greg Handley, and Jay Gibbs. And with that, we're very happy to have Secretary Lorenz to talk about some of the hiring and salary issues that she faces on a daily basis and what the agency is trying to do to address those issues. I know it's hard for you to get your job when you don't have enough staff also. So welcome to the committee, Secretary.
Thank you. We're going to get the presentation up. Yeah, Joel, if you leave it like that so I can just sort of generally make sure my slides are moving along. Okay. Good, thank you. All right, let's start with this. And I want to start by saying to the whole committee, thank you for having these hearings. This is a really important topic. And I want to say thank you to Donna, because I think what's so important about her comments is that you're hearing from a real employee, and it's easy for us to get caught up in words like salary and positions and overhead, which I'm happy to talk about, all those things. But at the end of the day, we're really talking about people. And those pictures there, people do dangerous jobs on behalf of Kansans, whether they're out filling potholes or plowing snow. So it really is about people, and it's not just about KDOT employees, it's also about taxpayers. So it's about all those things. And I commend you, and particularly Representative Francis, for pulling this together and giving employees a chance to talk as well. And I've had conversations with other members of the committee before we got here, over the last year or so. So thank you all for taking this on. And I would point out, I'm not sure in all of America if there's a more complicated issue right now when it comes to workforce. And so I would like to point out that, first of all, work has to get done. We have to pick up trash, we have to mow, there are so many things that we have to do to help Kansans get where they need to go safely, to keep our economy moving. So we have to get our work done. And at the same time, taxpayers need good value for their tax dollars. And there are a lot of things that are out of our control, like across the nation, a workforce shortage. And we got an aging population. We always knew baby boomers sometime were going to decide to retire. They just are deciding to retire faster, and some people think the pandemic helped boot them on out. And we've got shifting population, which we'll talk about in a minute. Those are things that we can't necessarily control. Now, when I say things that are in our control, I mean like collectively state government. That means the governor and the legislature in Kansas, and we all have a different role to play, but we all have a role to play. So we can adjust salaries within our top line budget, and we've done some of that, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have some responsibility to improve the working conditions, and we've done some of that. And we need to improve our business practices. We've done some of that as well. And we overall need a wage increase for employees. And I would point out that when we adjust our salaries within our budget, that's under a review and approval process. So everybody's got a lever here, and all the levers sort of have to work in conjunction. And quite frankly, we're behind. We're behind. I think you'll hear that. So today I'm going to talk about our challenges, current and ongoing. But as Representative Francis says, I mean, the reality is these challenges started a while back, and in some ways they're starting to catch up with us. We're going to talk about the workforce environment. We're going to talk about some of the steps that KDOT has taken, and talk about current and future concerns. So in terms of workforce challenges, okay, this graphic is the one that's like, this speaks to the nation. So the lines there represent numbers of people who retire or quit in any month across 20 years. And that gold line just happens to be 2021. We have never seen people leaving the workforce like we have in the last 12 months, period. So across the board, you call it the great resignation, you call it the great take this job and shove it, whatever you want to call it, people are leaving the workforce. So we have a harder time recruiting, and we have a harder time retaining workers. We also know that we're seeing population shifts, and that's been going on for a long time. That's not anything particularly new. So 80 counties have seen, population declines since 2010. So the pool from which we can draw workers in the last year has shrunk significantly, but has been shrinking in the state for quite a while. So that's part of the issue here. It's just the availability of workers, period. Michael White's here with us today from Kansas Contractors. I can tell you the contractors likewise are having a hard time recruiting and keeping people. There's a workforce shortage. At the same time, we see in several counties increases in traffic, even though we see a decline in numbers of people. This is a good example in Thomas, Decatur, and Sheridan County. We know that McCarty Dairy has opened there and the Hoxie Feed Yard. So we've seen increasing traffic, which means increasing workloads for KDOT, but the overall population has been declining. This one, I think, speaks to, and I appreciate Donna, I don't know if she's still on the phone, but I'm sure she feels this all the time, as we do all across the state. We have fewer employees than we did in 2017, and significantly fewer than if you looked back 10 years. So I just went back 5 years, because I think it's a little easier to kind of wrap your mind around the last 5 years. So you see in the blue lines there, declining numbers of full-time folks, but you also see an increase in the number of temps that we're trying to bring in to get the work done. And this one, trash. All right, so when we talk about trying to get our work done, for those of you that are in the Northeast, and I would say particularly Johnson and Wyandotte County, a little bit Douglas, but Johnson and Wyandotte, we have a problem with trash like crazy. So we have had to hire contractors to come pick it up because we don't have enough people to actually do trash collection. I would also point out there's a bit of an education campaign we need to undertake, because people need to quit throwing their trash out the window. So it's like a two-sided, like any one of these things, pick an issue, and I can tell you 4 sides to any of the issues, because it exists. Now, in Wichita, we don't have the same problem because we're able to partner with corrections, and we actually use corrections labor. So anyway, I don't know quite the right, you could probably help me out with like what's inmate labor. I was going to say like prisoners, but we use inmate labor to pick up trash. We can't do that in Kansas City because we've explored that, because you have to have supervisors, because you can't let inmates out to collect trash unsupervised, and Kdot workers are not certified or trained to provide that level of supervision. So we do look for creative ways wherever we can, but Kansas City represents one of those areas where we don't have the supervision available to put them out on the roads. We don't have the same level of trash trouble as we do in other parts of the state. I don't know why, but I can tell you in Kansas City, it is a mess. It doesn't reflect well on our state. We're trying to get that taken care of. I would be the first to say, I don't think we're doing a great job. We need to do more, but it costs money. Likewise, a shortage of people has consequences when it even comes to filling potholes. This poor person says, this is my second tire I popped in 3 months. So what we see is because of a workforce shortage, particularly in the winters, right? You go out to do some patching and then you have another freeze-thaw cycle. The patch pops out, you get another pothole. So we are aware of the problems. We are trying to do the best we can. We don't have enough people. And then this is an example from Sedgwick County, but I could go on and on about some of the, what we see on social media related to complaints as it relates to maintenance. But this is the one that I think really, as I look forward to delivering Ike, and I think, I'm so thankful that we have such a robust and flexible program, and I couldn't be prouder that we have stepped up and we have increased construction lettings 200%, because we have a strong program and we have good partnerships with the private sector, and we'll talk a bit about that in just a minute. Those are also jobs that are going out to construction firms. So we've increased it by 200%, and we need to, because we know the substructure of our pavement needs to be rebuilt. But we've had a workforce decline of 6%. And there's just no way to get away from this. It is hard to see fewer numbers of people and have increasing workloads. Like, those are not in equilibrium. And I'm not going to try to tell you they are in equilibrium, because they're not. So we're going to talk about the actions KDOT's taken in just a minute, but I want to dial back for just a minute and remind you about how Kansas funds transportation. And you'll recall we've got a variety of revenue sources across the top. We share some of that with the Special City County Highway Fund, which is cities and counties, and some transfers to other agencies like revenue as they collect gas tax and that sort of thing. But this is basically how we fund transportation in Kansas. Now, this is the part that, this is part of that complexity that we have to bear in mind. I fully appreciate how, we're not the only state agency. There are 18,000 state workers. We can't get so far ahead of everybody else. We're part of the bigger collective good. You all have a hard job because you have to manage all of those agencies. So I can advocate all day long for KDOT, but I also understand we're part of a bigger thing. So I'm here to say, I want to work with you to try to figure out whatever we can do to make KDOT stronger and state government stronger and make sure we're getting good value for taxpayers. So like, I'm all ears for I'm all ears for ideas. So we've got the 18,000 workers, 18,000 workers. We have a KDOT budget. It's in two pieces. Unfortunate word, unlimited, because it's not actually unlimited. But what it means is those are dollars that go to construction projects. And on the limited side, you all have to approve our overall budget. So you don't approve project lettings, that'd be a bad idea. But on the budget side, you all do review our overall budget. And within that, we have some flexibility to move between like equipment and supplies and salaries. Our top line budget is $283 million. So we have some flexibility there, but we can't move things so much that we get out of equilibrium with the larger 18,000 employees. So it's all about this balance piece, and it's hard to manage. As you'll see in 22, we estimate $156 million in salaries, so it's a big part of our approved budget. And we project we'll have $6.5 million in savings because you all approve a budget, salaries based on how many people we need, but we don't have all the people we need, so there's a savings associated with that. And we'll get back to that in a minute because that's an important point that we used in 2019 and 21 to try to identify some salaries. So you can see 10 years ago, we spent about $157 million. And when I say we, I mean the collective we, not KDOT. The state spent $157 million, almost $158 on salaries. It dropped to $138, maybe $139 million in 2017. And now it's come back up and it's projected at 156. I don't think we'll spend 156. We don't have that many people, but maybe 100 and I think we project like maybe 16 million in savings in the coming year. But anyway, you can see our budget 10 years ago, we were spending more on people 10 years ago than we are now. There are some efficiencies. There aren't that many efficiencies. It's because we don't have as many people. So what have we done to try to address these problems? Well, the first is if you don't work in a safe place, nobody wants to work in an unsafe place. So since 2019, we have been very focused on improving safety. And you can see there that our incidents are down 46% because we now have a director of safety. We do tailgate meetings before anybody gets off on the work site. We're very, very focused on safety, and we've seen worker comp costs go down as well. So not only is it a benefit to employees, it's a benefit because we're saving the state money. We looked at other states, benchmarked against other states to bring better practices in. If there's anything I'm proud of, this is the most important thing because now employees are safer than they were. We still are going to have incidents, but I'm happy to say Northwest Kansas, $2,000 last year in worker comp claims, $2,000, unbelievably small. We are seeing good results as we focus on safety. And we're trying to be more competitive in trying to get workers. So we've expedited the hiring process. We are using what I would say, some would say modern, I'd say like just what we should be doing. We're using LinkedIn to advertise. We're using Craigslist to advertise for employees. We're trying much more interactive ways than just posting in the newspaper or on the department website. So we're really trying to meet people where they are. We actually hired 3 recruiters to go out and try to find people. We have a partnership with the Department of Corrections so that we are, and we were on this path, COVID hit, but we're going to get training into prisons for CDL so that when folks leave the prison setting, they already have a CDL as soon as they can test into that. We're working with the Topeka Rescue Mission. Those are folks that need jobs. If they can get their CDL, we'll give them a job immediately with good supervision and a little bit of grace to make sure they're showing up on time. They might get a little extra encouragement, like they might get a little more grace at Kdot than they would in the private setting, just so we can try to get them on their feet, and it becomes a win-win for both of us. We are doing other things like bundling inspection services, not construction projects, but we're saying like, okay, we're going to put these 5 projects together. That way consultants have some better certainty around the amount of work that would be available. Consultants and contractors left the state during the lean years of T-Works. We have to even encourage them to come back to the state to do work, and they have to have certainty that there's going to be enough work to reinvest in the state. That we're having some success with that, and we're looking at how we can do other work more efficiently. This is a big one. We're going to identify preservation work earlier so that contractors can get a handle on when work is coming up so they can better bid it and make sure they have people available. This is an ecosystem of work. We got to make sure our contractors and our consultants and our Kdot folks are all on the same page, because it takes all of us to pick up this lift of the IKE program. E-ticket, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Can you explain this advancing preservation letting schedule a little bit more? I really don't understand what the graphic means.
So previously, we would have said in October, hey, from October to January, this is what we think next year's preservation work is going to look like. What we're going to do is start, instead of saying that in October, we'll start telling them in July. So they get a faster run at planning their work for the next year. Okay. Now, e-ticketing, what this allows us to do is do some virtual acceptance of tickets instead of having to have an inspector on site. We started doing this during COVID. Other states were already doing it. So this is just an example of trying to automate where we can. We don't have to have an inspector necessarily if we're doing more of a sampling of tickets instead of having to inspect each ticket. Like I said, this was one, I mean, there aren't many silver linings of COVID, but this is one of them because it forced us to move into a remote situation.
So what's a ticket? What's a ticket represent? I mean, it's not like what the Highway Patrol gave Representative Delperdang yesterday.
Like, here's all this stuff. Like, here's, 2 tons of concrete and 500 tons of rock, and here's all the stuff we're bringing into site.
Contractor gives that to you, or the inspector? I mean, I don't know how.
Not over my skis.
Okay.
And we can get you a more, I don't want to.
Well, I don't want to wear it out, but I hate to sit there and nod affirmatively when I really don't understand what we're talking about.
I will. Yep. Yeah. I'm Bert Moore. I'm the Deputy Secretary and State Transportation Engineer. What she's talking about is.
Are you the new Lindsay?
No.
Was Lindsay Deputy Secretary? Were you a Deputy Secretary before Lindsay left? Oh, okay. All right.
I'm the Chief Engineer.
Oh, okay. All right.
And have been for 3 years. Tickets on a construction project, say an asphalt project, the dump trucks show up with asphalt and they've got a ticket that certifies from a certified scale of how many tons of asphalt are on that truck. And usually, what you used to do is had an inspector standing there pulling those tickets and collecting those all day long. Same thing when concrete gets delivered on a job. There's a certified ticket that this batch was batched out with this much cement, this much water, this much coarse aggregate, fine aggregate. So now we're able to do some of that electronically. So it's still a certified process, but it's done electronically instead of somebody physically picking up a ticket.
So the savings is that it's done electronically, so you don't get the ticket and then hand it to someone else to key it in? Or
The savings is I don't have to have a guy standing there picking up tickets all day long. He can be out inspecting the construction work. He can be out watching the rollers compact the asphalt, or he can be out watching the concrete being placed on the bridge deck instead of running back and forth and picking up tickets all day
So
long.
who determines that the amount on the ticket matches the amount on the load? How's that correlated from the scale?
There's a certified scale and it's electronically transmitted to Kdot, and then they reconcile those at the end of the week or at the end of the day or something.
So the ticket probably actually takes place at the scale site more than it does at the actual dump, yeah.
Right, it's always generated at the scale site, but then the truck driver takes the ticket from the scale site, takes it to the job, hands it to the inspector.
Okay.
And now he's not doing that anymore, it's doing
Okay.
it electronically. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. And like I said, we were doing it manually until COVID hit, and then it was one way we could minimize risk on the site, and now we're going to move forward to implement it on a full-time basis. Okay, now, in terms of targeted wage increases, so this goes back to that trying to remember the 18,000 employees, and manage within our budget, and try to get to where we have the biggest problems. So in 2019, we started an internal process to talk with employees about what worried them, what upset them, what could we do to make KDOT a better place, and certainly wages were at the top of that list. So we took a look at other states and other cities and counties, and we determined that 21 job classifications were the hardest to recruit and retain. And that includes equipment operators, mechanics, technicians, highway superintendents, and civil engineers. 1,500 existing employees, so 1,500 employees, along with, we needed 45 new positions. This is in 2019. So for those who were classified, we gave those who were classified a 1 to 2 step increase. For engineers, we gave them a 2.5% increase. And for the equipment operators and those others that weren't engineers, a 5% increase. And we funded that. It cost about $6.5 million. And we funded that through salary savings. So that was in 2019. I believe that was also the year, I think, that the legislature approved a 2.5% increase. So some folks got a 7.5 and some folks got a 5 if you were in that 1,500. We used data to decide, where did we have the biggest gaps? All right. So that was 2019. 2020, here comes COVID. We keep working. We didn't have as many people leave. We didn't hire very many people, but we didn't have as many people leave either. 2021 gets here, and Lord, we're like, oh, we have got to hire some people. So we look at where are we having the hardest trouble hiring people, and it was these equipment operators, because those were the people that were leaving the most. So we used that classification, and we raised their rates up. We used the Kansas Turnpike KTA folks as our benchmark. So that's how we raised it up to about 16.5 per hour. That's what KTA starts their employees at. We also did a calculation. I think this is important to tell you. This is not precise, but it's defensible. We also talked to KDOT employees, and we said, all right, when we hire somebody that hasn't done this job before, we have to take a supervisor off work to teach that person, and the new person isn't as productive. We calculate based on lost productivity from the supervisor and increasing productivity, but they start, not at a high level. It costs us about $37,000 per new employee. So that's a cost to the state as well in terms of lost productivity. So using that, we looked at what do we need to do to increase equipment operator pay, and we also took a look at who's most likely to be injured or have an incident. And again, not surprisingly, it's the new folks. So that's how we targeted those starting wages, was to say, where are we having the biggest problem? And it was with new employees, new equipment operators. The data shows, and I think Donna was talking about it, if people, not everyone, I'm not suggesting everyone, but if people come to KDOT, they don't always stay, but if we get them past about 5 years, it's a good place to work, and oftentimes people will stay. But we have a really hard time getting people in the door sometimes. And I have got some numbers that, because I asked Maribel to pull these for me. So on the engineering tech, so in Southwest Kansas, the engineering tech series, on average, we have to post that position 12 times, and it takes 178 days to bring somebody in. Of course, we need to increase that starting wage. Now, in District 4, where Donna is, we don't have that same problem. It's a problem. It's just not as bad. In that case, it's 4 times. We post 4 times, and it takes us 55 days. So that's why this is complicated, because it varies by where you are in the state. Get to the Northeast, which is, it's either going to be Topeka or Johnson or Wyandotte County. This one just is eye-popping. We have to post that position 16 times, and it takes us 251 days to get somebody in. So it varies so much, because it's not just It's like, what is the rest of your labor market? What are the other jobs in your labor market? So that's why it's a complicated thing, and it's really hard to get one size to fit all, because you're competing with other industries. So, back to the story. So in '21, we looked at our data, and we looked at turnover and what turnover costs us and workforce incidents, and we saw Kdot had about a 25%. We needed to, we were having turnover of 25% in the equipment operators, KTA's at 9%. So we increased the salaries to match KTA. It helped 638 employees, and it cost about $2.6 million. And we were able to fund that out of salary savings because we have, more than $6 million in salary savings. So that's how we got to those. Okay, a few more concerns, and then we'll get to some ideas. Okay, so inspectors, this is a big concern as we look forward. We know that if you adjust for inflation, our inspectors today make less than they did in 1990, and we have a tighter labor market than we did in 1990. We only have 236 inspectors. Would we like, as Donna talked about? Yeah, we would like to have more people to inspect projects. We need, in a fiduciary responsible sort of way, we need people representing the state to do some inspections. There's no doubt about it. We also have to get our work done. And if we can't hire people, we got to find a way to get our work done. Okay, next slide. We expect we need nearly 200 more inspectors this year if we're going to keep pace with construction lettings. That's a lot, okay? And we struggle, as Donna said, she was spot on in many ways. So Jackson County, Holton, they start at $22.90 per hour. These are actual postings, we start at $16.56. If you're an equipment operator, where are you going to go work? Which one are you going to choose? Because we also, go ahead, yeah.
So this inspection job, maybe I'm making too much of it, but it doesn't sound easy to me. It seems like you need some experience and some training. So from the time a guy starts with you as an equipment operator without a CDL, how long does it take you to get him to the point where he can actually be an inspector that you trust on the job?
So really, we're mixing two different, I'll call them crafts, okay? You've got the equipment operators, and those are our maintenance guys. Those are the guys working, patching the potholes, fixing the guard fence, and that kind of thing. And then you've got the construction inspectors, and they're the ones that are out inspecting the contracted construction projects in the state, okay?
These guys go this way. They don't go the other way. Inspectors can do snow plowing.
Yep.
Snow plow guys don't do inspections.
Right.
So I guess you're right. I kind of got a little confused there. It's easy for me to get confused. But the engineering tech then, what are kind of the minimum? I would assume those don't grow on trees. I don't feel very confident to inspect a engineering job, but I might be able to run a mower if I'm not struggled too much.
We can train, yeah. And there's a training program.
Yeah, and what's that take to,
Progression program.
and background?
I mean, really what I'm looking for when I hire a construction inspector is somebody who's got some abilities to take and look at a set of plans and kind of understand those, have some math skills, because there's a lot of math involved. It's not high level math, but good algebraic skills, and some geometry. Somebody who is kind of a detail-oriented person, right? Because they're taking a set of specifications and a set of plans, and they need to make sure that what gets built on the ground matches those specifications. So, it takes, we hire an engineering technician trainee, and in about a year, they could be promoted to an engineering technician if they can pass the classes that we send them to, and then they progress up from there.
And so what kind of background, an initial background when you hire this guy? Are you looking for a background in construction maybe? Or are you looking for an English major? Probably not.
Probably not, but I've seen some.
Bachelor's degree?
No, high school degree, high school diploma.
With algebra.
Yeah, with some math background, right.
So once you hire the guy, you think he can kind of be in charge of inspections on a job with some oversight after about a year?
He can be an inspector. I can send him out to inspect a particular process on a project and feel pretty comfortable watching a asphalt pavement placement or a concrete pavement placement. As they progress, then it's like organizing. So I'll say, okay, Joe, I want you to go watch the milling operation over here, and Fred, I want you to go watch the paving operation over here. So as far as supervising the entire site, 3, 4, 5 years of experience is good.
Thank you, Bert. Any other questions Leo? Representative Delperdang, excuse me.
If I could, a quick one on that is, where do you apply for these positions? How is that working out? Because I've heard from some, even in my district, gee, I've put out an application there and I never hear back. Well, obviously, part of the burden on not getting people is on us then, if we're not even replying back to those who apply.
I know we've had problems with that in the past. We have tried to improve that, but it's a statewide, it's the state of Kansas employment process is very similar to when somebody applies for a job in any other agency.
So one thing that has improved just, I think, this week is now, because we had to do the tax clearance thing, and now I think we have like provisional or conditional tax, like we can go ahead and hire somebody and clear tax within a week or two, as opposed to, there were some built-in things like we had to clear taxes before we could even make an offer, and that would take a couple of weeks. And so we can't afford to wait that amount of time. So I appreciate the question. I think those are good questions to ask, for sure. Okay, it's all, there are a variety of things, and that's certainly one of the varieties of things. Okay, so a few more worries. No surprise, my gosh, I think this exists all across America. People could retire now, more could retire in 1 to 5 years. That's not only just a problem of bodies, it's knowledge and experience, and that is hard to replace. So, there is, I would say we've tried to make things better. We've tried to use data to find out where we have our biggest gaps to pay people more. It hasn't been perfect. There isn't one single silver bullet. There are trade-offs and there are benefits to the approach we've taken. It hasn't been enough. It hasn't been enough in so many ways, whether it's hiring people faster, finding other ways to do outreach, paying them more, wishing that there were just more people in Kansas to hire. It's all across the board. So any ideas you all have, we are way open to those. I do think a pay increase for all state employees would be a good thing. Rising tide would be good for all the boats. Maybe, I can't speak specifically. I do know that some municipalities have better health care plans. I think we may be making some progress in that area. Maybe offering better CAPER sorts of things. We are just so open to whatever we can do, because I am concerned as we see more work going out the door, how we're going to keep up with that load. Our snowplows, the guys that are out there plowing snow, they get hit at night. Not just at night, but at night, because people are going too fast and they don't give them enough room. It's a dangerous job. You can see here KHP and Kdot working together to reroute traffic so that we could do an emergency repair. These are important jobs. They're dangerous jobs. And whatever we can do to help improve the situation, I am all for. So I would be happy to answer whatever questions I can.
Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a series, if you don't mind, but on that last slide you had up there, reducing employee contribution rates for health plans, we here are on state health plans, obviously. How many within KDOT participate in Health Quest, for example? Because that can reduce your rates by up to 50%.
So I'm glad to say we've got Joel and Brendan, and we'll
Okay.
take notes on all those specific sorts of questions and happy to get them back to you. I don't know. And I agree. What is that, like an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure?
Okay, on the KDOT salary and wages expenditures, you mentioned 10 years ago, we spent more on employees than we do now. What was the employee number 10 years ago versus now? Because without that, I don't have the
Yep,
full
that's a good
picture to
question.
look at.
Yep. Considerably more. So, yeah.
Okay, so we spent an extra dollar a piece, or, again, is it
Yeah.
something you could follow up and let us know
Absolutely.
what those
Right,
are?
right. These are good questions, and we're happy to either provide written or come back and answer whichever way. But these are good questions because it will help in the analysis of what are the next steps.
You were talking earlier with the correctional facilities, you had possibly training plans going on with CDLs. How do you train someone for a CDL if they are locked up? Now, I understand you've got certain with work
So they
release
have
and
to
so
be,
forth.
it has to do, and I would not be the right person to answer all this. We have started talking with the Department of Corrections, and it has to be for inmates that are getting ready to be released. It's not like, so it's under supervision. It's when they're getting close to their release date.
Parole or release date. So
Yeah.
is that happening now, or is it something you're talking
No,
about?
we're talking, so we were on track in 2019, had started good conversations, then COVID hit, and, prisons like shut way down. But we've restarted those conversations.
Okay, because I think that'd be a really good thing with recidivism rates. I mean,
So you
I've
have-
helped get different technical and welding and et cetera out there. But, and then on one of your pages, the 2019 approach continued, you had a asterisk and in blue letters, lower paid workers received the larger step in percentage increases. Don't see a page number, otherwise I'd refer you to it. It looked like
This
that.
one.
Oh,
Okay.
right. So the equipment operators and the so the engineers got the 2.5%, and it was the lower paid employees like equipment operators, engineering techs, they got the higher 5%.
Okay. But then on the previous person that had testified, when raises are given on a percentage, higher paid employees get more and lower paid employees get smaller raises. We need to consider giving set amounts to every employee, so the lower paid employees get a higher percentage of raise. So is that happening or is it not? Because I'm getting conflicting
So
here.
2019, that's what I can speak to. So I think Donna's been here quite a bit longer than I have, so I'm only speaking to 2019. And that's when we said, we thought it was important to give 5% to lower paid employees. What happened before 2019, we can certainly look up. And I hear what she's saying. It does make sense. If you gave everybody 2% across the board, those who make more money get more money because 2% of 100 is a lot more than 2% of 50. So again, those are the sorts of things you try to balance. In 2019, we specifically looked at giving lower paid employees higher percentages and higher paid employees lower percentages. And a set amount could be helpful too, like that, we could look at that.
Okay. And you have kind of an across the board, what's the average pay for the KDOT workers? Because again, I'm going back to the previous
So you know
person,
what,
'cause it was-
unfortunately, we had that slide in here, and then I was like, I don't know if that's helpful or not. So what we can do is get that darn slide back for you. It feels like we are like 45,000, and our neighboring states are higher, except Missouri, which might be a tad lower, but I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it, but we'll get that for you.
Okay, yeah, because,
Absolutely.
and then I assume where we're looking at hourly rates, is there a kind of an X percentage you could put on that they get this much overtime over a year's, course of a year?
Yeah, and that is a good question, because when you look at equipment operators, you see overtime there if there's a snowstorm.
Right.
That sort of thing. On the construction side, we'll look that up, I suspect, because we've got so much construction going on, I suspect we've got inspectors working overtime as well. We'll get that for you.
Yeah, I
So
would
Bert
like
says
that.
a lot. So
Okay,
we'll get that.
I would like that, because I'm looking at some of the rates that we were provided, and I'm doing some quick math in my head, and we're looking at 50, 60, somewhere upwards of 80,000 a year on the hourly, plus whatever they're getting for overtime. And then we're seeing comments here that there's no incentive to continue working for Kdot. Well, if I'm paying 100,000 a year and there's no incentive, I'd like to know how much do we need to pay your employees to have an incentive to want to work there?
We're happy to get that information. Like, we are not data poor.
Sure. So anyway, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I think the more information you have so you can kind of wrestle with this, we are happy, whatever you want, we're happy to find you.
Are you done, Representative Delperdang, for now? Yes. Okay. Representative Weigel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're done, right? Okay.
For now is what I think he said.
Thank you for your presentation. In here, and I can't find it right now, it said something to the effect that Kdot personnel workers are not being paid as much as KTA workers. I think that was, I think you saw, yeah. And, I mean, they're almost, if not side by side, pretty much integrated. I mean, except that the KTA is a toll and other roads are not. So can you explain to me what the difference is? Why you put that in there and why is that occurring?
So we have raised our equipment operators' starting wage to match KTA equipment operators' starting wage. We did do that because that's what our analysis showed where we have the biggest gap in terms of being able, like I shared, hard to get people to apply for jobs. It's the different, I mean, I guess I'll just say it's the difference between working for the state and working for a toll authority. Toll authority pays more. I think you could look at our engineers and you'd see our engineers make less than KTA engineers.
You might clarify who decides who gets raises at KTA versus who decides who gets raises at
That's right.
KDOT.
The KTA board decides on pay plans, not individual people, but on overall salaries. And it's a historical thing, I would say. For a long time, KTA has paid better than KDOT.
Well, I know that to be true because I have a lot of friends that were troopers that got off just a regular road and went to work for KTA, and that they were making probably 10% more just because they were working the turnpike. And I always thought that was fascinating, so, okay.
It is true.
All right. Okay, thank you.
One thing I'd like to point out to the committee, when we talk about historic wages and everything, we got a lot of information from Craig Knowlton Monday and Merle. It has some of the history of pay wages across the state. Like the secretary, we are inundated with information sometimes, and it's hard to.
Yeah, and I think Donna mentioned, I mean, you go back, and there was the question around, should I be classified or unclassified? And those were conversations that predated 2019 when I got here. But culturally, I can say, I mean, I tell people now, go hire as many people as you can. We need people. And they're like, I don't know if I'm supposed to hire people. I'm like, what are you talking about? And there is a culture that was created over time that sort of said, we want to, whatever that was, the year where you saw like salaries are so low, there was a push for a while to not pay people much and to not, there was a culture of concern, employees had concern. And I'm just telling you that existed, and it still in some pockets exists today. And we're working hard to try to overcome it. And so we have to look at culture, and we have to look at money, and we have to look at a beautiful IKE program that we all want to deliver, and we have to think about how can we get that work done, and we have to look to our private sector partners too. It is in the midst of a worker shortage, so it's a complicated thing, and I am very open to any ideas about how we can deliver our work, make sure taxpayers are getting good value, because taxpayers deserve to get good quality services.
Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always believe that, your employees are the greatest asset. They're the ones that the public comes in contact with every day. They get a bad experience, well, then that leaves a bad taste in their mouth. On your 371 employees are eligible for retirement, are you familiar with the DROP program?
Say again?
The DROP program?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Well, if we could institute, we could change that. But what it is that somebody that retires or is planning on retiring, they hit whatever the number is for retirement, like 30 years or whatever, they can go ahead and stop contributing into CAPERS, and then the state will also kick in and put it into a different account that they'll have if I understand that right, for the future. That's one suggestion. You're already paying retirement, so are they, so it might help them. I'm looking at my department that I retired from. So another thing, you asked for suggestions, and
Sure.
I got two more. The 457 plan. Johnson County had a hard time hiring deputies, so what they offered is that they started at 1% and moved it up to 3% over 3 years. Around 3 years. And what it is that the county would contribute, if you contributed 1% of your salary into a 457 plan, the county contributed 1%. Same, they went to 2 and then finally went to 3. I know these cost money, but if we're going to hire and keep employees, we have to do something because we're really falling behind.
And I appreciate this subcommittee, you're the Public Safety Subcommittee, right? That is one of the foundational things that government provides is safety. So I appreciate that. I don't know if KDOT can implement that, or is that like a statewide Craig Knowlton kind of thing?
Probably it is, but, I'm just making suggestions.
No,
about
I think those are
how
good
we kept
ideas.
employees. And
Yeah.
another one that we had was kind of far-fetched, but they implemented it anyway, was to get the people to the highest pay rate as quick as possible. So they couldn't leave, or they wouldn't leave.
What was that?
To get people to the highest pay rate as quick as possible, so that they couldn't afford to leave. And
Yeah.
that's kind of to the extreme, but that's how bad it got. Also, the STEP program, if the steps should come back. When I worked for the sheriff's office, I knew I could follow my pay throughout my entire career. I knew exactly what I was going to make my entire career. At one step, if I moved to another step, I would know. So, and you would get a step increase if you earned it. They weren't given, you had to meet a certain criteria. And if you didn't, you didn't get it. And sometimes that motivates employees to even be better. So, I don't know, that's just some of the ideas I had. And I don't know if they're possible to happen, but like I said, 371, you could lose them this year.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Thank you. Yeah, we need all the ideas and all the incentives to stay and and where we can, increase your skills and increase your skills fast. No doubt. No doubt.
Other questions? Representative Delperdane.
Again, Chairman, I'm playing with my phone here. I had an email that came in back in October, and it's from not an employee, but he is with another company that you would work with, okay? And it was just talking about, again, he was pushing for the pay raises for the KDOT employees, but I'm trying to figure out, at first when I read it, I'm thinking, why is an individual from another firm, a public firm, pushing for these? And I'm trying to figure out what kind of hardship does that maybe present to the public firms they're working with or the contractors, et cetera,
So.
or probably with our turnover.
The conversation, I'm not sure if this is quite your question, but the conversation that I have with both consulting firms and contractors, they are desperate for KDOT to have more staff, more qualified staff, because we are like the meter. We're the governor on the work. So if we can't inspect work and we can't hire inspectors, we can't let projects, they can't get their work done. If we can't review plans that consultants send in, then we're not going to send out more work for them to do. So we have a review responsibility. And if we don't have enough people to do the review responsibility, then we can't get more work out the door. And that necessarily then limits the amount of work the private sector can do. So it's in everybody's interest. And, I'm not going to put Michael on the spot, but I do know that in conversations, that we have heard from the private sector, they have severe concerns about our ability to execute because it directly impacts their bottom line.
And that gets into details on this email, and I'd be happy to forward it to you. I just don't want to play it out here public.
Yeah, but no, the consultants and contractors alike are worried about our ability to execute the IPE program. And that's why we've taken all these steps to try to shore up public-private sector partnerships, trying to modernize the way we recruit and retain. And it's everything we can possibly do sort of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got just a couple. So I want to make sure I understand this right. This 895 is the number of equipment operators we had in 2017, and 779 is the number we have currently?
Currently, yes.
Okay. And then, one of my thoughts, and I think me and Representative Resman sometimes have different outlooks on stuff. My dad always told me, don't you hate it when someone starts out and they're 60 and they say, my daddy always told me that you couldn't eat benefits, and I think we had testimony from Mr. Knowlton at one time where he said, you increase the raises enough, talking about priorities, makes it easier to afford the health insurance, more money's going to capers. But again, I know we sometimes get that way, but one of the things that concerns me is kind of maybe, do we need to have more job coaching that actually happens in Kdot? Like when Ms. Schmidt talked to us just a little bit, she talked about that guy that'd been there for 14 years, the brand new guy's making just as much as him. I got the impression from her that he was a valuable employee, that length of service was worth something, but for some reason, he wouldn't jump through the hoops to get the raises that could have possibly been available to him. I wonder, if there's not something that we could do internally there to help people know what they can do to move forward so that we don't have these. They should have the initiative, but obviously they don't. The other thing, and I think you mentioned it to me, I heard the horror story in September, and I think I've shared this with you before about sometimes how we handle sick leave. Somebody's sick on a Monday. I totally get the fact that at a certain point, you don't want people taking a day off so that they can increase their pay for that deal. But you think you've made some adjustments on some of those issues to make it?
In November, we modified our policy, and I'd be happy to provide you with a write-up about a summary of how that works.
I'd like to see that. Thanks, in case I get more questions on that.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for the Secretary? Madam Secretary, I really want to thank you for coming today. These things are always difficult to talk about, and you've been very forthcoming. And I want to thank Ms. Schmidt for her testimony also. It's hard conversations.
So this is not unusual. One quick thing, if you have just a second. Sure. So Clinton Capps emailed me on Friday. He's out of Oakley, and I asked if I could share part of his email with you, and he said yes, so I want to just real quickly. He said things like, the wage rate increase was a very good start. He's talking about the equipment operators, to retaining and recruiting employees. I'm also aware of Kdot's current strategy of a stronger advertising campaign. He's on the construction side, and he says he's worried about recruiting and retaining engineering techs. For the work, he says, engineering techs, the work that we do, we are severely underpaid compared to the state and national average for the same position. He goes on and says, I don't feel like we're properly compensated because we are away from our family, like they have to do traveling for some of their work. And he says, I'm not writing this letter out of anger. I am writing it with great concern for Kdot employees. I hope whoever this letter reaches, you will take the time to look at and understand where myself and I am sure other employees are coming from. And I think he speaks on behalf of everybody, including me. I appreciate you taking the time to read this, and I would really appreciate any feedback you have. And on behalf of Kdot, everyone, I say thank you for holding these hearings and for trying to figure out how we can recruit and retain and pay people more and still get good value for taxpayers. So I really appreciate you inviting me in today, or asking me in, or whatever. Thank you.
And hey, I'm sorry, I found 3 more questions that I wanted to ask.
Geez, I should have stopped while I was ahead. If it's not you, it's him.
Hey,
What have you got?
So in your budget, in your salary budget,
Yeah.
is there wage shrinkage? And by that, I mean, are there positions in your budget that you're allowed the full-time equivalent of positions, but there's not funding for those?
I don't think we do that anymore, do we? No,
That's
we
all
don't
gone
do that.
away?
No.
And then, so we heard from Craig Knowlton about if you want to give somebody a raise, that you have to make a request to the Department of Administration, I believe, and then there has to be a market analysis done, and then you have to have approval of the budget director and the governor. Is that something like that? Is that?
Something like that. So we have to write it up. We have to do our analysis as we should. So we do look like when I was talking about equipment operators and KTA and that sort of thing. So we do a market analysis and we submit it because it goes back to that 18,000 employees. We can't just like unilaterally shift our pay without thinking about the other
So it's
agencies.
very cumbersome. It's not one of those things where you can just snap your fingers
I
and
would
take
say
care of
it's
it.
somewhere between that and cumbersome. I think it's good due diligence, actually. I think we're doing what we should do on that.
Okay, thank you again.
Now,
Oh,
look.
now, okay. See, we started the flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering if you have any data on the increase in applications that you were receiving through the increased advertising? Or
I don't think
moving
we
to
are.
LinkedIn? Oh, you're not
okay, so-
like moving to LinkedIn and
Yes,
moving
so
to Indeed?
Let me get that for you, because I think the good news is because we weren't ever doing it, now whatever we've got is an improvement. But just in general, there's just such a worker shortage. When I play out, like we post project positions for 100 days or 200 days, but that's not in every part of the state. And that's what's, the tricky part is not every part of the state is exactly the same. But we can get you the LinkedIn and the we advertise on Craigslist. So happy to get you that.
And
Thank
then
you.
those applications are still hitting some of the holdups for hiring. So if somebody is looking on, do you use Indeed? I don't know.
We'll have to look to see.
Okay, well, let's just say they're an online job
Yeah.
place. And they're getting job offers in 2 or 3 days from other folks, and the state is still having to wait 2 to 3 weeks.
UPS is hiring in 30 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Now, we also have to do drug tests, so there's that.
And tax clearance
Yeah. So
of some sort. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you all very much.
Committee, this is in your folder. It's subject to change, but we've tried to compile the schedule for the month of February. You'll notice on there that there's a list of budget hearings. That's the day we're going to hear it. As much as possible, we're trying to let it rest overnight, so if we need additional information and everything, we have an opportunity to get that. Then after it's kind of rested, we'll do budget recommendations. Again, after that point, we'll need Merle or Dylan at some time to talk about the procedure of that. But once we have our recommendations together, there's a process where they'll email you the recommendations. You're supposed to notify them if you don't want to sign it, kind of a COVID protection thing. And then after we've had an opportunity to do that as much as possible, I'll do the report out. So that's what appropriations report out is. So if you want to attend appropriations or watch, as I try to explain the will of the committee, that's the opportunity to do that. So as you can see, we're going to have a really compressed schedule. Appropriations report outs are on Friday, so we, as much as possible, unless we get hung up, we're not going to meet on Fridays, since I'll have appropriations report outs. For the rest of the week, on Tuesday, Joel Skelly is going to give a presentation on the pilot program that Kdot is carrying out as far as road usage charges. We're also going to have testimony by Doug Schinkel with NCSL, Leighton Yates with the Association of Automobile Manufacturers, possibly Tony Reinhardt. I believe there's one other individual. Tony is with Ford Motor. And one of the focuses of the meeting tomorrow, I'm very concerned about maybe electric vehicles are going to be implemented sooner than I thought in the back of my mind, primarily because of the Ford F-150 and its uses. But that's kind of the thought process so that we all understand how that might affect future funding for the Department of Transportation. Wednesday, we're still trying to get some things finalized. We will probably meet then. We're going to hear about the KBIs. They've got a kind of a last minute pay increase plan that may be coming through the budget so that they more closely mirror what the Highway Patrol request is. We're also going to try to get some more information get the Highway Patrol to present as far as what their pay plan is. So we've got a little time to think about it before we get to their budget. All of those haven't been finalized yet. We're still trying to make contact, I believe, with the Highway Patrol to make sure that someone with their agency will be able to attend. So any questions about the rest of the schedule? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, pretty intense. Okay. Representative Delperdang.
Thank you. Just a minor question. I wanted to do it while the secretary's still here, but when we get into electric vehicles and road usage, I'd love to have, will you be coming back to testify from KDOT's perspective? What's that do to the road taxes? What's that do to your concerns? Or
So Joel will be here tomorrow, and he will, in addition to talking about road usage charge, he'll talk about what we project in terms of revenue from motor fuels tax. And like, long story short, anybody, I mean, like, we don't project a decline in motor fuels yet, but what we don't really know is how quick the adoption will be for EVs, particularly under the Biden administration, as there's a real push to move toward EVs. So I would say that's why we're doing this road usage charge study, which looks at charging on a per mile basis instead of based on the fuel you use. It's how much road you use. Yep.
And then, just while we're on the conversation real quick, Representative Ploskin, do you remember the bill number of Representative Riley's bill? It's an interesting concept, and I think it needs a lot of vetting before we go forward. But, you know, one of my concerns about the road usage charge is we've talked about this thing for getting close to a decade. Privacy issues, transfer of data is an issue. Representative Riley has a bill in transportation right now to put a 3-cent kilowatt hour on the charger. That has some issues too. You know, my understanding, I think I shared a document with Representative Delperdang that happened in Vermont, or some research from Vermont, where it's hard to get the data from a charger to the utility or to somebody without requiring separate meters and things like that. So you wind up not being able to collect for the charger at home, the level 1 charger. I think the level 2 charger maybe can be programmed in that way. But anyway, he's got a bill out there and he's very interested in it. So if you, you got the bill number?
It's 2488, House
Yeah.
Bill 2488.
So it's along the lines, I think, of what you and I talked about one time, Representative Delperdang.
yeah, if I might inject, I printed out the documentation information from the state of Vermont specific to per kilowatt charge similar to gallon gas, but it really got into a lot of concerns and what ifs on it. Even getting into the home chargers, you had to have a separate meter on the thing, and then if you put the separate meter on it, you had people that were kind of bypassing it because it was so easy to do at home, and there's just a lot of gotchas in there. So it's going to be an interesting one as we move forward to make this happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy answers to this. Anything else for the good of the committee? Okay, if not, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.